If you've ever wondered why the biggest stars seem to break down at the peak of their success, this is your moment to listen closely. Secrets shape empires, truth destroys them. Tonight, two comedians who escaped the machine, Jim Carrey and Dave Chappelle, reveal why the industry's most powerful figures trembled at the mere mention of Michael's untold knowledge.
I'm here tonight to blow the lid off it, to be the whistleblower. I'm sick and tired of the secrets and the lies.
They're not here to gossip. They're here to explain how a system built on silence reacts to someone who refuses to play along. Their stories connect the dots between betrayal, power, and survival.
So what they want is never really surprising. How they get there is where all the surprises are.
If you've ever wondered why the biggest stars seem to break down at the peak of their success, this is your moment to listen closely. Secrets shape empires, truth destroys them. The public perception was simple. Dave Chappelle had a nervous breakdown. He walked away from $50 million, disappeared to Africa, and lost his mind, or so the media claimed.
I'd never seen these things before. I didn't see anyone else do this and get back up. I didn't see, and the drum beat is he's crazy, he smokes crack, he's this, he's that.
Yeah.
It was a wild experience.
They painted him as unstable, unreliable, crazy. But here's what the public didn't know. Dave wasn't running from success. He was running from the same machine that eventually consumed Michael Jackson. Like a canary in the coal mine, Dave was the first major star to publicly expose the industry's true nature. "You're not supposed to do this in my business," Chappelle once said on stage. "I'm up here doing something nobody else in this business has the balls to do." His refusal to conform wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. He showed the world how the system destroys those who question it. Michael, in contrast, stayed in the system but built a secret map of its machinery.
Michael is seeing the infinite in in things that even the artist didn't see it.
The takeaway: when the media calls someone crazy, look closer. Sometimes crazy is just code for telling the truth. Silence protects power. When Dave sat across from Oprah, millions watched as she asked the question everyone wanted answered: why'd you walk away from $50 million?
Everybody wants to know, why'd you walk away from $50 million?
I wasn't walking away from the money. I was walking away from the circumstances with the newfound plateau.
The real story wasn't in his response, it was in her reaction. Every time Dave tried to explain his concerns about industry control, Oprah redirected, reframed, or dismissed him as unstable. This wasn't random, it was the same playbook she'd used against Michael Jackson for decades: frame the resistor as fragile, not fearless. The media told the world Dave fled to Africa out of paranoia. The half-truth was that he needed space to think. The full truth was that he recognized what Michael Jackson had lived with his entire career: a system that doesn't just want your talent, it wants your obedience. Dave's retreat mirrored Michael's retreat to Neverland. Both were labeled eccentric, unstable, disconnected from reality. The pattern is clear. When power can't control you, it rebrands you. Learn to recognize the strategy. Labels aren't always descriptions, they're weapons. Martin Lawrence waving a gun on the street, screaming, "They're trying to kill me." Mariah Carey stripped of her dignity after a $100 million deal. Dave Chappelle escaping to Africa. Michael Jackson isolated at Neverland. These aren't random incidents. They're symptoms of the same disease. An industry that chews up truth tellers and spits them out as crazy. Dave saw the pattern. Michael lived it. Dave once asked aloud, "What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street screaming, 'They're trying to kill me'?" The question was rhetorical, but also prophetic. What if Martin wasn't paranoid? What if he was aware? Hollywood's narrative has always been easier to digest than its reality. But the people labeled unstable are often the strongest ones in the room. The lesson? Don't dismiss breakdowns as weakness. Sometimes they're battle scars. Understanding this pattern is the first step to seeing through the smokescreen that shields power from accountability. Mel Gibson's confession cracked open another layer of Hollywood's hidden machinery. "You can't get mad," he said. "You have to make a deal with everyone else." In those words lies the unspoken social contract that governs the entertainment world. Betray and be betrayed, but never take it personally. It's psychological conditioning disguised as professionalism. The goal isn't just fame. When Gibson described being stabbed in the back by people he once trusted, then being expected to smile about it, he wasn't exaggerating. He was describing a system built on moral anesthesia, a world where emotional numbness is rewarded and empathy is career suicide. Michael Jackson refused to sign that contract. That's why he was feared. While others accepted betrayal as business, Michael documented it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In Hollywood, silence is the currency, and forgiveness is the leash. Integrity doesn't just make you different, it makes you dangerous, and danger in that world gets erased. Jim Carrey once said he was sickened by the standing ovation Will Smith received after the Oscars slapped. To him, that applause wasn't support, it was surrender. Hollywood is spineless en masse, he said. We're not the cool club anymore. It was a rare moment of public honesty from a man who had seen the machine from both sides, the star and the survivor. Carrey's disgust mirrors Michael Jackson's own disillusionment. They both watched the same hypocrisy, an industry that worships talent but crucifies truth. The system protects predators and punishes whistleblowers. Carrey's words weren't about one man's outburst. They were about a collective moral collapse. Michael had felt that collapse decades earlier. The takeaway? Public applause often hides private rot. When the crowd cheers too loud, ask why. The most dangerous sound in Hollywood isn't silence, it's the ovation for the guilty. That's when truth has officially lost the room. Dave Chappelle's dress story became legendary for a reason. It wasn't about a costume, it was about control. Every major black comedian, from Eddie Murphy to Martin Lawrence, had been pressured to wear one. Dave noticed the pattern and refused. "I'm funnier than a dress," he said. That moment wasn't defiance, it was liberation. It proved how easily the industry manipulates identity for submission. Michael Jackson had seen this long before Dave ever said it. The constant demands to fit an image, tone down, or be more marketable were just softer versions of the same coercion. The second you resist, the narrative flips from genius to difficult, from visionary to unstable. That's the punishment for non-compliance. And yet, the same people who called Dave difficult rewrote an entire scene in 10 minutes when he said no. The mask slipped. That's how the system works. Control through illusion, not force. The lesson: boundaries are rebellion. Say no, and the truth starts writing itself. When Oprah Winfrey sat with Michael Jackson's accusers after leaving Neverland, she called it a conversation about healing. But healing for who? The timing was surgical. She aired it when Michael was gone, unable to defend himself. Yet when Harvey Weinstein's crimes surfaced, Oprah stayed silent until his empire crumbled. That's not journalism, that's selective morality. She built her empire on narrative control, deciding who gets redemption and who gets ruin. For decades, she painted Michael as unpredictable, unstable, and secretive. But behind that image was a man collecting evidence, protecting children, and exposing exploitation long before it became a movement. That's why her distance from him after his death was so loud. Fear speaks through silence. The truth is uncomfortable. Some of the loudest advocates for justice protect injustice when it's profitable. Michael's real crime wasn't what they accused him of, it was that he knew too much, and he never learned how to stay quiet. As the years passed, the public forgot the details, but Michael never did. He recorded conversations, he documented contracts, he took notes on every betrayal. These weren't the actions of a paranoid man, they were the instincts of someone who had seen too much. When he told fans they're trying to kill me for my catalog, people laughed. But years later, when Sony gained control of his music empire after his death, nobody was laughing anymore. That catalog wasn't just worth billions, it was leverage. Michael owned more Beatles records than Paul McCartney. He held publishing rights that controlled the soundtrack of an entire century, and that kind of ownership isn't allowed for someone the system can't control. Ownership equals freedom, and in a business built on manipulation, freedom is fatal. The moment you control the narrative, or worse, the money, you become a liability. That's when the countdown starts. When Michael's sister LaToya said, "They killed my brother," the media dismissed her as dramatic. But family members had watched the same pattern unfold. Increasing isolation, manipulation of his finances, and a global smear campaign that didn't stop even in death. His name was dragged, his legacy questioned, and his character rewritten, all while his estate earned record profits. That's not coincidence, that's cleanup. The same playbook that painted Dave as unstable was used on Michael, just amplified through billions of dollars in global headlines. Every scandal, every accusation, every exclusive tell-all was another brushstroke on a portrait of madness designed to erase credibility. The truth was buried under narrative control, and every time someone close to him tried to speak out, they were silenced, discredited, or ridiculed. This is how power protects itself, not by proving the truth wrong, but by making sure no one believes the person telling it. Meanwhile, Dave Chappelle returned. Not broken, reborn. His comeback wasn't about comedy. It was about reclaiming authorship. When he said, "You are being bought and sold the way the slaves were," the laughter stopped. The room went still. He was speaking to a generation raised on illusions, the same illusions that Michael had spent his life warning about. Dave's refusal to sell his name, his silence, or his independence was the clearest act of rebellion in modern entertainment. Netflix didn't own him, the studios didn't script him, and for the first time, the system couldn't silence him through contracts or character assassination. Michael never got that luxury. His war was fought before social media, before digital platforms could bypass gatekeepers. Dave became what Michael couldn't, the unedited voice of truth, in an age where truth could finally travel faster than the lie. That's not evolution, that's vindication. Jim Carrey, once Hollywood's golden clown, became its most reluctant philosopher. He stopped attending award shows, he stopped pretending. "There's no me," he told reporters, "just a collection of ideas." At first, people mocked his spiritual detachment, but behind it was exhaustion, the same fatigue Michael carried for years. When you spend decades performing for a system that profits from your pain, detachment isn't insanity, it's survival. Carrey's awakening connected him directly to what both Michael and Dave had discovered, that Hollywood's real addiction isn't fame or money, it's control. Once you break that spell, you stop being profitable. And when you're no longer profitable, you're erased. This block marks the turning point, where laughter, music, and performance stop being art and start being armor. The deeper truth? These men didn't lose their minds, they lost their patience with pretending. The system didn't make them crazy, it made them conscious, and that's what it fears most. In the years following Michael's death, strange things began to happen. Artists he'd inspired, Beyoncé, Kanye, The Weeknd, all started speaking about ownership, masters, and independence. The very war Michael had been fighting in the shadows became public doctrine. "Own your masters," they said, echoing his words from decades before. The industry tried to package it as empowerment, but make no mistake, it was rebellion. Dave Chappelle's stand against Comedy Central followed the same blueprint. He demanded the rights to his own name and show, something almost unheard of in corporate television. "You shouldn't call it Chappelle's Show if I'm not getting paid," he said. That one line exposed a billion-dollar lie, that artists don't own their art. Michael had predicted this movement, he just didn't live to see it. But every time an artist claims ownership today, a piece of his unfinished revolution finds its justice. His silence became a prophecy fulfilled through others. There's a haunting pattern in how the world treats its visionaries. We mock them while they're alive and worship them when they're gone. Michael Jackson, Dave Chappelle, Jim Carrey all told us the truth, but we were too entertained to listen. Their breakdowns became memes, their warnings became punchlines, and yet everything they said has now come true. The same journalists who called Michael unstable now praise his business genius. The same outlets that dismissed Dave's meltdown now celebrate his courage. Truth doesn't change, perception does. But in Hollywood, perception is currency. Destroy a man's image and you bankrupt his influence. What we're witnessing today is a correction, a slow rewriting of history by the audience itself. The internet gave power back to the people, and the people are finally connecting dots the media buried. Legacy isn't what the system writes, it's what time refuses to erase. Jim Carrey once described Hollywood as a cluster of crazy egos pretending to be the center of the universe. But he wasn't mocking, he was mourning. Fame had become a religion, and its worshippers didn't pray for enlightenment, they prayed for relevance. Carrey stepped out of that temple, and so did Dave. Michael tried to build his own, a sanctuary called Neverland, but they crucified him for it. The deeper message? Freedom in Hollywood comes at the price of isolation. Once you stop playing the role, the audience stops clapping. But that silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. It's the quiet space where truth starts to echo. Carrey embraced it, Chappelle mastered it, Michael died inside it. What ties them together isn't tragedy, it's transcendence. They each prove that fame without freedom is just a prettier form of slavery. The escape isn't in applause, it's in authenticity. Today, when Dave steps on stage or Jim speaks in interviews, there's no mask left, just truth. And when Michael's music plays, every lyric hits differently. You can feel the warning in his words. The pain wasn't performance, it was prophecy. These men weren't entertainers trying to be philosophers. They were philosophers trapped in an entertainment machine. What Hollywood called madness was actually resistance, what it labeled ego was self-preservation, and what it sold as comeback stories were survival manuals disguised as art. Their journeys exposed an uncomfortable question: how much truth can a system built on illusion actually survive? The answer lies in their legacies. Carrey's silence, Chappelle's courage, and Michael's music all scream the same message: truth doesn't die, it just changes frequency. And no matter how much noise the world makes, the real ones always cut through it. That's why they feared Michael. That's why they still fear the truth. When Dave talks about the cost of integrity, it's not theory, it's history repeating itself. The price of staying true has always been exile. Michael paid with his peace, Jim paid with his purpose, Dave paid with a decade of misunderstanding. Yet all three found freedom on the other side of exile. Because when the world turns its back on you for speaking the truth, that's not isolation, that's proof you're ahead of your time. The world doesn't hate truth, it just hates seeing its reflection before it's ready. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. These stories aren't separate. They're chapters in one long, unfinished rebellion against the illusion of control. Michael fought it through ownership, Dave through humor, Jim through consciousness. Each discovered that freedom isn't given by the industry, it's stolen back through awareness. The machine can take your name, your image, your reputation, but it can't take your clarity once you wake up. That's why these men still matter. They force the conversation that the system tried to bury. Every time someone questions a headline or challenges a contract, their echoes live on. So the next time you hear the word crazy attached to someone who speaks truth, remember this trilogy of resistance. Madness isn't always the absence of reason. Sometimes it's just the price of seeing too clearly in a world built on lies.